Hi, welcome. We want to talk about how to get your spouse or partner on board with budgeting, paying off debt, basically just handling your finances better. You might have a reluctant spouse, and do you feel like one of us has ever been reluctant?
Yeah, I think in general, I think we all know this, that women want to control and that men want to be passive. And so a lot of times men tend to be a little bit less on board with budgeting most of the time because they tend to be a little bit passive. And so I think that kind of goes with the territory is most of the time you're going to see the woman is going to be really gung-ho, and the men tend to be a little bit more passive about it. And I think that's just kind of built into our natural, just the naturally way we're built.
So none of these are scripted. I don't know what he's going to say. Every time I bring him on, he says something that I'm like, should you have said it that way? But regardless, if you're sitting here and you don't have a spouse on board and they are, maybe they don't want to face it. Maybe they don't want to budget because they feel like it's going to restrict them or control them. Maybe it's a sign of control to them. But you're like, no, this is our path to freedom, right? This is our path. Someone said that's the low-key truth. Good job. Matt always say it as it is. But maybe you're thinking, this is our path to freedom, but your spouse is thinking, are you trying to control me again? Then we are going to share with you one tip today, because sometimes it's all we need is one tip, and because we don't want to steal all of your time and we don't want this to be an hour long. We are going to share with you the one tip that we both think is the most important thing that you can do if you want to get your spouse on board with anything money related. That can be budgeting, that could be paying off debt, that could be saving money, that could be investing. It could be anything related to your finances. We want you to start doing this one thing. You ready to tell them?
Yeah, and remember that the first key to all money freedom you have in your life is going to be budgeting. So getting your spouse on board for budgeting is step number one.
Yeah.
So the first thing that you have to do is you have to communicate a lot.
Yes, you need to communicate. Communication is key. And I think that so often we don't communicate because we're scared of the outcome. We're going to be scared of the person's response, their reaction. There have been times whenever Matt has had to have tough conversations with me as the spender in our family. And instead of just brushing it under the rug, instead of just saying, you know what, that's going to be a hard conversation, or I don't really want to deal with that, instead of doing that, we have those hard conversations. So communicating often. And I think also it's because money, it seeps into every single aspect of our life. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, it's kind of in everything. You just don't want money to be the thing that dominates your life either.
Yes, so it's kind of like finding this balance, right? You don't want money to be what controls your life and dominates your thinking all the time.
Or dominates your relationship.
But also money, when you get on the same page with your money, you get on the same goals, when you're working towards the same thing, getting that under control can free your relationship from stress, tension, arguments, all of the above. So you have to communicate about it because it interacts with your life so much. It's something that you have to talk about. So we're going to be talking about some do's and don'ts when it comes to talking with your spouse about money, because some of you might say, every time I talk about money, it ends in a fight or there's frustrations, and we don't want that for you, right? You don't want that for you.
Right.
So we have a list of do's and don'ts, and I think that someone just threw a paper airplane in front of us.
Thanks, kids.
Parenting's going greatly at bedtime, let me just tell you. Stop throwing paper airplanes. I'm not checking that right now. Stop it. Go to bed.
Go to bed.
No, okay. Anyway, so we're going to go over some do's. And can you close the office doors?
No, it's okay.
Okay, we're going to go over some do's and some don'ts. And I know I'm guilty of all of these don'ts. I don't think you are.
And I think another important thing, before we get into the do's and don'ts, sorry to spring this on you right here, but I think it's also important to think about, if you've never thought about the love languages before, figure out what your spouse's love language is. If your spouse is all about giving gifts, then figure out a way that you can speak to that in your spouse. If your husband is all about doing things around the house and helping out around the house, figure out ways within y'all's money conversations that he can contribute in that way. And maybe, all the other ways that you can express and feel love for each other. Keep that in mind as you're going into these conversations, because if you don't think about those things in your conversation, then it's more than likely they're not going to receive it the way you kind of want them to receive it.
And I think that took us time. It took us a lot of time. So if you're thinking, I've been trying and nothing's working, well, give it time, because every time you talk, it's like you're trying out something new. You're practicing again, and it takes years of practice to reach a point where sometimes you're comfortable, and that it might take that time. So we're going to talk about some do's and some don'ts. And this is where I wish I had like a whiteboard or something, because I'm such a visual person. But I recommend setting up a weekly family meeting. We call it a weekly family business meeting. This was actually this one's idea.
It was, yes.
And we talk about a couple of things. We talk about things like our meal plan. I even, I kind of take over the meal plan. I do the meal planning. I usually hand over the shopping list to him. Since COVID, he's been doing all the grocery shopping. And we go over a meal plan and who's cooking what dinner. Because sometimes I'll be like, look, I know I'm not going to want to cook this one. So will you handle that? That way there's always the knowledge of, what's going on for meal planning. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because so often we get off budget because there's not a meal plan in place, or because one person says they don't want to cook. There are many times that Matt comes home and I haven't started dinner, and I'm like, let's just go out to eat. And what does he do?
I tend to crack the whip and say, get in the kitchen.
No, he doesn't. Oh my gosh, I'm never letting you on these again. Get out of the screen. That is not what happens. Usually he says, okay, I'm going to cook then, because we're going to stick with our goal. We're going to stick with our meal. And he goes in the kitchen and cooks dinner. And I'm like, no, let's just go get Chick-fil-A. And he's like, no, we said we were going to cook this. We're going to cook it. I don't ever know what he's going to say when he comes on these things.
Hey, I don't crack jokes very often, but when I do, they're winners.
Good. Okay, so
anyway, but also with that too is if you and your spouse are talking about the meal plan together, you can talk about something that the spouse wants to eat. Maybe your spouse really loves steak and potatoes. They're just like me. They really love that meat and potatoes in part of their meals every week. And so, you can reach to that and you can make sure that your spouse is included and they get something that they want to eat during the week. It's not just like, my wife always makes me eat vegetables, whatever it is, because
clearly he doesn't like vegetables.
But you know what I mean. It gives both members of the family there a chance to have a say and talk about what they really want to eat. And honestly, this helps bridge that gap. You're going to talk about something really small on the meal plan thing, so that way you build on that a little bit more, and so that way you get a chance when you start talking about big things like dreams and budgets. It's not a huge leap for you, because you've already been compromising on a lower level as well,
or you've been agreeing. So in this family meeting, we want you to talk about your meal plan. We want you to talk about the weekly activities that are coming up, so everyone's on the same page. We want you to talk about your budget. So someone said, do you include kids in the meal planning? Every now and then, yes, I'll say kids. If they're around while I'm doing it. I usually meal plan on like Friday nights because I'm crazy, or Saturday mornings. And I'll say, is there anything you want to eat this week? And I'll let them pick a meal because, hey, why not, right? They get
usually it ends up being breakfast for dinner for them.
Yeah, it does.
They really like eggs and bacon.
Yeah.
Which, how can you argue with eggs
exactly.
and bacon?
So we talk about our activities, and then we always talk about the budget. Now, when you get to the budget part, this is where you might be thinking, no, we're not going to do that, or this is where it gets hard, right? The other stuff, it's like, okay, that's easy. But let's talk about some things that we want you to do when you talk about money with your spouse, okay? We want you to come, sorry, we have our notes over there. We want you to come to the table with an open mind. If you are married, if you are in a long-term committed relationship, then you have thoughts and they have thoughts. And when you come with an open mind, you are saying, I am open to not only sharing my thoughts, but receiving your thoughts as well in this.
And I think that a good rule to make is that, come in with an open mind, but also come in with something that you want to change or something that you want to contribute. Because if one person's kind of running the whole meeting, the other person feels excluded, then then they're not going to get on board with you as well. So, and you just got to present that to them and be like, hey, I saw this. Can you think of one thing you want to change about this?
And that's exactly what we did. A lot of times I'm the detail-oriented person. I would write the budget. I would bring it to the meeting and I would say, what changes do you want to make? I didn't slap it down and say, boom, there you go. It's perfect. But it was. I didn't do that, right? I said, do you see any changes we can make? Do you see anything we can do differently? Do you have anything you want to add or subtract? Right? So when you come with an open mind, it makes it easier. It makes the other person feel seen and heard and respected. Also, make it fun. Budget meetings don't have to be boring. You can, have a glass of wine. You can play a family game afterwards. It doesn't can you think of anything else to make it fun?
There's always things to make it fun.
Okay. Respect any boundaries. That's the next one. Oh my gosh, my mom is watching. Respect any boundaries. If there are boundaries that you have, maybe your boundary looks like not focusing on the past, not focusing on your past money mistakes. So maybe that's off limits, right? Maybe you're respecting your boundaries looks like, look, I know I screwed up and I might have maxed out this credit card, but we're not going to bring that up in this meeting because it's already happened. The credit card has, we already have some boundaries in place to make sure that we don't fall back into this trap and we no longer need to go down this broken path that we've already dealt with, right? That's what respecting your boundaries looks like. Do you want to say some of the other ones?
Yeah, and also make sure that it's something where it's not all going towards one direction, right? So say that in Allison's case, she's the spender in our marriage, and so we wouldn't want to go into a meeting and just talk about all the ways that Allison can mess this up or is messing this up.
I see what you're saying.
You want to make sure that you're both kind of seeing, okay, well, you're doing a great thing here by doing this, and if we were having a personal business meeting between the two of us, I would talk about, I love the fact that you always do the great job of setting the budget and putting it all together for me so that we can just sit there and look at it together. And I don't, and then my brain power is put into just trying to figure out how to change it one way or another. And so you're able to talk to each other in a way that seems more respectful in that way.
Because ultimately you're a team, right? There's going to be one person that's better at, that enjoys maybe even doing part of it more, right? So I enjoy the pulling out the numbers, physically writing the budget, rewriting it, and bringing it to him. I don't think you enjoy that as much, do you?
No, I don't.
No, he doesn't. So I enjoy it. So together, you each come with your own strengths. He is more of like, if I have an idea, a big idea, a grand idea, he's the one that says, okay, well, let's figure out how we can make this work. Let's figure out how we can cast this vision. Whereas sometimes I'm so focused on the details. So working as a team, finding your strengths and using those, it can take time, but I can promise you it's worth it. And lastly, give grace. Give grace to your spouse. Your spouse is not perfect. Around about a year and a half ago, maybe less than that,
Present company excluded.
Oh my gosh.
No. Okay.
Anyway, about a year and a half ago, we had moved into our new house and I just kind of was like decorating and spending and I was putting more and more things on the credit card and Amazon packages were showing up and I was falling back into a spending cycle. And although we weren't going into debt, it was keeping us from being able to save our money. And we sat down at a family business meeting and Matt didn't say, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? You're ruining our finances. He said,
I noticed that you've been putting a lot of stuff on the credit card, and I feel like that's part of the reason that we haven't been able to save like we want to. And I was like, is that something that you want to keep doing, or do we want to change that somehow so we make better savings
yes.
goals?
And in that moment, I didn't feel attacked. I was like, yeah, you've noticed it. I've noticed it too. I've been feeling it.
And another good thing about that is you should probably sit on what you're about to say. Like, I had noticed that for a few weeks, but I sat on it for a little bit.
You could have said something sooner.
The reason why I said it on it for a few bit is that I wanted to say it in a way which she would understand it. I didn't want to say it in a way where she sounded accusatory. I wanted to say it in a way that was she could understand it. So you might want to sit on. I'm not saying you have to sit on it a couple weeks.
No,
but
don't sit on that long. Don't do it.
But it's a good idea for you to just sit on it at least for a small amount of time, so that way you don't come across in a way where your emotions are expressed out in a frustrating way as well.
Yeah. Someone asked how long we've been married. It will be 10 years this summer, but we didn't start these meetings until about 2 years ago.
No,
No,
that's
and
a
I
good
don't
deal,
even think necessarily in terms of communicating about money, we were doing as good of a job as we are now until we started these meetings. These meetings changed the way we talked about money with each other.
Yeah, and the amazing part about it is we were actually able to pay off all the debt that is in our story. We were able to do that before we even started having these meetings. So if you started out with these meetings, I could only imagine the amount of progress that you'd be able to make in the amount of time that we were able to do it.
So we do have a question I want to answer, and then I want to go. Those are the things you should do. Come with an open mind, make it fun, respect boundaries, work as a team, and give grace. Someone asked, how often do you, as a husband, look at the budget? Is it okay for her husband to look at it only monthly or be looking at it more?
That's on your husband's feeling level. If your husband is totally okay with looking at it once a month, then that's fine with him.
See, but you look at it monthly, weekly.
Me look at it, I mean, I look at it to a point where it helps Allison feel not as anxious about it. So if Allison feels really anxious about it, then I'll look at it and work through it with her. But
because I look at it almost daily. Like I would say at least every other day I'm tracking the money. That's like my detail-oriented job. Okay, I want to get back though to these family meetings. This way to communicate, right? The number one tip we're giving you is to communicate often about money, right? That's the overall goal. These family meetings is the vehicle to get you to reaching that goal. I want you to understand that. Your goal is to communicate with your spouse about money in a helpful way, not in a hurtful way. One vehicle to do that is have these family meetings, right? We talked about what we want you to discuss, which is the meal plan, the activities, the budget, and any weekly goals. And we're not going to go into weekly goals right now. What we do want you to do is come with an open mind, make it fun, respect any boundaries, give grace. What I don't want you to do, which is something that I know I'm guilty of all of these, is use an accusatory tone. Yeah, we don't like. Let's check our tone.
Again, sit with your accusation, or sit with what you're going to say. That's hard.
Yes. Like that's what he did a year and a half ago. He sat with it. So when we had that meeting, he didn't come to me and talk down to me, because if he would have done that, I would have caved in and said, I feel like a terrible person. I go into this guilt spiral, go into a shame spiral. And because I was dealing with emotions, I would have likely spent money emotionally, right? And triggered that impulse spending emotionally. And then
don't point fingers at the spouse. The honest truth about all the money problems you'll ever have in the rest of your life is you both had a hand in it. So just keep in mind that you're always going to be in it together, because it's y'all's money. It's not her money. It's not my money. It's our money, and so it's always going to be there together. So don't point fingers. It's not worth the amount of effort you're going to put into, and especially not worth the fight you're going to have about it.
Do you want to talk about the next one? Because I know I've done that too.
And then bombard your partner. So
I think
first
for
of all,
the first
always,
like 7 years of marriage,
it took a long time for her to figure this one out. Yeah. So like one thing, don't bombard your partner in a time whenever you know they want to have like a dedicated time. Like Sundays during a Cowboys game is like my dedicated time. I'm going to sit in front of that TV, and sometimes I'm going to fold clothes and some things like that. But nonetheless, that's my dedicated time to be in front of the TV. And she now knows that.
I don't do anything. I don't talk to him.
But she took a long time to figure that out. Sometimes she'd come in the middle of a Cowboys game and I'm like, okay, no, not now. So we have to figure it out some other time.
So having a weekly family meeting scheduled, like every Sunday at noon, or every Wednesday at 6 p.m. or whenever, allows your partner to not feel bombarded. Because there were moments when he would walk in from work, and I would be like, we need to look at our checking account, because I think that we overspent and we need to sit down and do this now. And he was like, I just got home, like not even in a hello. And so when you bombard your partner, they're already going to feel like, no, I don't want to be a part of this. You're crazy. I don't want to be a part of it. And then last one is don't focus on emotions. And this is hard. I know it's hard for me, but when you focus on emotions, money is emotional, but money is also math. Right? And we don't want you to focus on the emotions of it, because sometimes when we focus on the emotions in the moment, you're going to use an accusatory tone. You might point fingers. So instead, there are times whenever, I'll just
focus
be like,
on the facts of what it is.
Yes, I'll just say,
did you overspend? Let's fix it. Let's figure out what we need to do. Sometimes the money issue is time sensitive, and you have to fit it in with outside of those business meeting times. but still, the don't still apply. You don't bombard. You don't use an accusatory tone. You say, honey, we have an issue. And I think tonight, can we sit down and fix this issue because I noticed it's going on.
Yeah.
And that takes the emotion out of it and allows you to both to work for it together.
And there are times whenever he might be at work and I'm like, oh my gosh, we went over budget, or oh my gosh, we got this unexpected bill. And we've been getting lots of unexpected medical bills lately, it feels like. And instead of my husband walking in the door after work and me bombarding him, I'll send him a text message and I'll just say, hey, we need to have a budget meeting tonight after the kids go to bed. And then he feels like, okay, I've got this. I know this, right? So, I don't know if you can hear a kid yelling mom, but it's happening. So that's what we want for you. We want you, when you can communicate often about money, it becomes easier. With your spouse, it becomes easier to talk to them. You'll realize that as you continue to practice, just like a skill, you're going to get better at it. We didn't get good at communicating about money until probably about 6 or 7 years into our marriage, and that was after we were debt free. So still, we were struggling during that time. What I want for you, and what I know Matt also wants for you because he's here, is we want you to replace those hurtful habits with helpful habits.
Somebody asked about getting their kids involved in saving. I think the ways that we've done it with our kids so far, and I don't think we have the answers to all the parenting in the world. I mean, I think, honestly, as parents, we probably fail way more often than we succeed. But the way we've done it with our kids is we've just said, hey, is there something that you're looking forward to getting? And they say yes, and we just start talking to them about, okay, well, this is $30. That means how many times do you need to save your allowance for the next few weeks? And then they kind of add it up and they figure it out, and that kind of gets them excited about saving along the way. And then I think eventually our hope is that we build that up a little bit more over the next few years, where they're wanting to go more than $30 at a time. Yeah. So that's kind of just our ways to take it is right now.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to go ahead and sign off. Thank you, everyone live who joined us. Thank you to anyone who's watching after this is saved and posted. And we hope you have a wonderful night. Bye.
Good night, y'all.